Shooting at longer distances is a skill that I've always wanted to learn, but it actually took a surprising amount of work to get to this point. Now, I was only shooting at 300 yards, so it's not exactly long distance, but it's farther than what I've ever shot before. Being able to find a place to do this wasn't exactly a spur-of-the-moment decision. It took a lot of planning and research, some failed range trips to scope out the land, and I know this sounds super lame to some of you, but it took some overcoming some doubt and thinking that this is a skill that I was allowed to do in the first place. Now, I know it sounds kind of cheesy, so let me explain. I didn't grow up being familiar with guns, so everything that I learned was entirely new territory, and every skill was, foreign to me. But every time I did learn something and got better at it, it was really so rewarding. For the longest time, I had this notion that even shooting beyond 50 yards, or God forbid 100 yards, was something that only the pros did, only the military needed. Again, because this was just so foreign to me. And I even thought that having a holster or a range belt was something that was like super hardcore at the time, which looking back on it is pretty crazy to think, but that's how it used to be for me. So for me, my exposure to long distance shooting was really just seeing a bunch of dudes in ghillie suits in movies. Maybe the closest I'd ever get to it is Call of Duty, or the thinking that I had to be in the military. But I knew I wasn't training to be a SEAL. It was just something that looked really fun and was a new technique and a new skill, and so I wanted to give it a try. And now I know probably a lot of you were thinking, and I, looking back, realize this too, really overthinking the hell out of this, blowing out of proportion. Because in reality, no one really cares, dude. Like, everyone's just focused on themselves. And so if I want to go out and try a new shooting skill, in this case, it happens to be shooting at longer distances, might as well go for it. So with this, I decided to do a bit of research to find a place I could go shoot, found it, picked a date, grabbed the M4, and then got to it. The first challenge that really started was just setting up and finding a good spot once I actually got to this location. Checking to make sure that I was allowed to shoot here in the first place, but also not being so far away from my car and all my stuff that I had to walk back and forth so much, and just so my belongings weren't out of sight as well. I wouldn't exactly call this long distance, so I will call it longer distance. But for me, it was a challenge. Some stuff that I really noticed off the bat is how much more selective I needed to be with taking my shots, and also how I had to be really intentional with trigger pull, sight alignment, and even my breathing, which I know are the fundamentals of shooting at any distance, but particularly at longer ranges. They really come into play. These are things that I've only had some exposure to. One thing that I noticed that I didn't anticipate was just having patience as well. When I shoot at shorter distances, I am much more prone to just spamming the trigger because it's fun and because I can. But being at longer distances, just as I had mentioned, I had to really be disciplined to make sure that I wasn't going to waste every shot and waste my ammo just by kind of spamming the trigger at shooting. And so that was something that took a surprising amount of more discipline than I thought it would. And so when I did hit the target, it definitely felt a lot more rewarding. Knowing that I've actually made the shot, and then also shooting on steel has a really satisfying ping. Hearing the delay and that anticipation of, did I actually make the shot? Did, my rounds impact where I wanted it to? That was pretty freaking cool, and so I did enjoy that a lot. One thing that I did notice too is I do need to get better at my holds, because I was at about 300 yards with the ACOG. The BDC, I'm still getting used to it. Basically, based on where I was holding, I thought I would actually shoot. I thought I would be on target a lot more, but it turns out I was shooting pretty low. So definitely something I need to practice on, but hey, it's more of an excuse to go shooting. One thing that I really liked was just how quiet and peaceful this place was, which is something that I feel like in everyday life, I don't really get. I'm always by my laptop for work, or you live, you're around a bunch of people. But it was really nice and quiet, and oddly enough, sometimes eerie at times, because I was the only person there. But that did make it very relaxing, which is another thing that I really enjoy about shooting a lot. So if you're able to find a spot like this, I know not everyone gets that. It's definitely something to pay attention to. One of the other big things that really stuck out to me was learning to use the tripod and also the tack table when it comes to shooting, being more stable with my shots. I use a tripod all the time for my camera, but obviously that's very different than using it for an actual rifle. Adjusting the tripod was something that took a surprising amount of effort to do. It wasn't difficult to hold and adjust it, but making sure it was fine-tuned and it was level enough, but also having the tripod not be so tight that I didn't have flexibility to kind of move my rifle took a surprising amount of time, the setup basically. And then another thing that I'm also kind of playing around is with the tack table. I feel like I like the idea of having a steady kind of platform to shoot on, but I noticed unless I really cranked down on the tack table, it would keep coming loose, which is something that was a little annoying. So I started to shoot just without the tack table, and instead I just used the bag and placed it right on the top of the tripod. And that definitely helped, but based on the type of gun that I'm using, I can sometimes have the notched portion of the sandbag there, or sometimes I have to flip it so the sandbag is just flat. And that does have some stability, some implications on stability of the rifle. So all of this is to say, it's just really just some initial learning curves and stuff like that, and kind of getting used to the gear that I have. I know it's going to help me a hell of a lot, but I still need to be good with it and put some more trigger time behind the gun and with the tripod as well to kind of figure out what I really like. So yeah, overall, it was a hell of a lot of fun. Definitely a lot of learning. I think a lot of preparation went into getting to this point where I could find this kind of place to shoot, and then making sure the weather was fine enough to go. I don't mind a bit of rain, but if it's pissing rain all the time and too muddy, I don't want my car to get stuck. And kind of the overcoming doubt that I'm allowed to do this kind of shooting. I won't get too cheesy into that again, but it was definitely kind of reassuring and felt good to know that I could actually go and do this. On one hand, it was nice to be able to actually shoot at 300 yards and hear the steel, hear my rounds impact the steel. But I think equally rewarding was knowing that I sucked it up and went and did it. And so I think if you're trying to learn any kind of skill, whether it's longer distance shooting or just getting better at concealed carry, drawing from your holster or anything else, definitely give it a try. Don't overthink it. Don't let it hold you back, because no one really cares. They're all just trying to get better themselves at shooting, and have at it. So I will wrap up the video here, guys. And those are kind of my words of wisdom, and hopefully this mini journey that I went through myself helps you guys and maybe inspires you to try out some of your own shooting skills that you've wanted to do for a while. So can't wait to go back to the range and take you guys along. Should be going in a few days, but until then, I will see you in the next one.